Hey guys, today is going to be my part 2 of my propagation series where we get to see how the propagations from my previous video have been doing and also some other new things that I've been propagating as well. So let's get into it. In my first propagation video, I propagated this Raphidophora tetrasperma, and so I wanted to show you the results from those. I was doing a test whether they liked water propagation or sphagnum moss propagation. So let's take a look and see. All right, so here my sphagnum moss propagation. I do have, I see lots of roots happening here, and they are strong roots. So just looking at this, I do think that it liked the sphagnum moss propagation. I've got a nice long root coming off of here. It's probably about 3 inches long, but it also has offshoots from the roots. And that's just one of those. And let's take a look at, so this one also pretty good, maybe not quite as long. However, this one has some new growth coming, like a new leaf forming right here. So that's exciting. And again, more roots, and it does look like a growth spot. Interesting. This one has not rooted, so it'll have to sit in the water longer, or maybe I'll try it in the sphagnum moss. Ooh, this one doesn't have very many roots either. It does have a new leaf forming here, but not any roots. So that's 2 without roots. This one does have a root, though it is very small, but it has a very large growth point. So that's interesting. 3 out of the 5 of the water propagation have roots. And from the sphagnum moss, I have 5 out of the 6 sphagnum moss propagations rooted. So this one did not root in the sphagnum moss. That's only 1 out of the 6. 3 out of the 5 rooted in the water. But the one big difference about the water propagation is that the water propagations actually started growing a new leaf. So none of the sphagnum moss propagations did that. I will say, however, that I think the sphagnum moss roots are heftier and stronger than the water propagations. So I think that the Raphidophora tetrasperma likes the sphagnum moss propagation better than water. So what I am going to do is take the ones that have not rooted yet and put them in the sphagnum moss propagation. So hopefully they will root eventually. And for these, I am going to be making a couple of different things. I'm going to be potting up single cuttings, but then I'm also going to be making a new pot with several cuttings that will be for me. I will probably sell the single cuttings on like Facebook Marketplace or something like that. All right, for this, I'm just using plain potting mix, Miracle Grow. This time, I'm just going to be potting up 2 of these. This one was a water propagation, and I want to see how well these do going from the water to the soil. I suspect that the one that came from the water will go through a bit more shock than the ones with the sphagnum moss. I'm going to be trying a trick with these. So my plan is to pot them up around the edge, leaving the middle open, so eventually I can put a moss pole in the middle. So hopefully that will work. Okay, so I got the dirt in, and I'm just gonna plant up all 6 of these cuttings, trying to plant them around the edge of the pot. That way I can have a moss pole in the middle at some point once they start trailing. I am very impressed with how these roots ended up in the sphagnum moss. I am definitely a fan of the sphagnum moss propagation, that is for sure. Thank you, Harley G, for exposing all of us to the wonderful world of sphagnum moss propagation boxes, that is. All right, so I do need to backfill this a little bit. Even though it's not like the prettiest thing in the world, I'm not really worried about it looking like just perfect because it's going to be trained up a pole anyway. So we've got, what is this, an 8-inch pot, and 2 4-inch pots, which that's exciting, plus the original pot that the plant came from, which that one's doing fine. It's putting out new leaf. Next propagation thing I had a huge red emerald philodendron, and I have it recorded here. From that propagation, I still have the main pot with 2 stalks and several leaves But from that, I got 16 cuttings. So I'm super excited, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm testing to see if it likes water propagation or sphagnum moss propagation. So I think it's been maybe about a week since I did this, so it'd be worth seeing how it's doing, if I'm seeing any rooting whatsoever. I have been trying to be diligent about changing out the water. I had a lot of aerial roots already that were very dry, so I'm not seeing any that are like, you know, plumping up or anything. I'm not really seeing any rooting right now. That's okay. I feel like water propagation takes a little longer. Let's check out the sphagnum moss propagation. Now I'm not really seeing any rooting going on right now, but it really hasn't been all that long, so didn't really expect to see any rooting, but that would have been like an extra bonus if they had rooted. So that's the red emerald. The next thing I want to show you is my string of hearts. All right, my string of hearts propagation, I did the butterfly method that Harley G talks about that she's done. So far, it's going really well. I've got tons of new growth, and I do see roots making their way through all the sphagnum moss. So that's exciting, and it would be so easy once the roots have really taken over. I will just pop this out and put it in, like I'll be able to put it in basically this pot and it can take over. So string of hearts, butterfly method propagation in sphagnum moss is doing super well. I'm just letting it go. I just make sure I keep the sphagnum moss very moist, and I did have some mold growth in here, but number one, I think it was because a few of the cuttings didn't take, and so they were just starting to decompose, which of course that gives the opportunity for mold. Also, I had it covered a lot, and so it was keeping things really, really moist, and there was a lot of condensation. So I did a few things. I let it air out a lot. I let the sphagnum moss dry out a little bit more than I had been. For one, I removed the decaying pieces very carefully, so I tried not to spread any mold spores, and I also used my Microbalance EC3 non-toxic mold killer, and I just spritzed it inside the container, and I haven't had any mold issues since. So that's exciting. I also do like smell checks, and if it starts smelling a little off, then I make sure I let it dry out, and I'll even spray it again if need be. So far, I'm like super excited. It's grown so much. All right, the next thing we're gonna talk about is my propagation box. I have a few things going on. This box, it's kind of like a hodgepodge of things. I have a combination of things. I have a silver sword philodendron, both two stems actually. Here I've got Cebu blue, and I have some Hoya, cannot remember the actual name, but everything is rooting up nicely, and I'm going to actually pot up this silver sword. All right, let's see what's going on with this Hoya. I have not really known what to think about this Hoya because the roots are not coming off in all these, like I've never propagated Hoya before, and the roots are coming off in so many different places that I'm like, how do I even like root this, like how do I even pot this up? So I think I'm going to have to like lay it flat, like, and the roots are honestly not that impressive on these, so I think I'm gonna actually let this root a little bit more in here until we get some more established, some bigger roots. Sometimes I will water with some liquid fertilizer once in a while just to make sure that the nutrition is staying up in there. And last but not least is my Cebu blue. I get like what the butterfly method, I guess, of the string of hearts, except this is Cebu blue. So in a previous video, I'll link it up here, I did a Cebu blue propagation, and from those cuttings I did the sphagnum moss propagation, and as you can see, it is doing splendidly. It's just taking over. It's really bushed out because I've got lots of new growth. I did have to come in and pick a few leaves that didn't take and just toss them out. Barely noticed the difference. There's just tons of new growth in here, so I wonder if I can actually kind of tease. So you can see this can come out in one piece, and we are gonna pot this up now because it's starting to circle around. I think I have the perfect pot for this. It might be a little deep, so I'm a little bit nervous about the bottom part of the soil being too moist, so I'm gonna have to really be careful about not watering it too much. So I'm going to tease this out take this out. I am going to unwind, just gently kind of loosen some of these roots, because there's a lot of these roots that are just twirling round and round and round. So I want to tease some of these loose. Okay. I am just going to set this down here, just like that. And that's it. Talk about like the easiest propagation ever. I will water this in, but I'm gonna let it dry out a lot. I have had issues with fungus gnats with propagations where it's in too deep of a pot and the bottom part just never dries out because there's no root, the root system's not down that far yet, and the fungus gnats just went nuts. And so it is under control, and I will probably be making a video about that because I hit them hard. It was starting to get out of control. So let's take a look real quick at all the things that we did today. Got my Cebu blue propagation. I am very excited. That was the most fulfilling propagation, I think. Getting to watch the roots grow around and then just plop it out, like pull it out and then pop it on top. I'm really hoping it does well. I haven't done it before, but as this series continues, you'll be able to see how it does. So I think that's it for today. If you found this video helpful, or if you liked it, please hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. No offense taken. It really helps me if you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can know when my next propagation series video comes out, and you can kind of follow these plants, their lives along. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.